wound to stop bleeding rapidly and help seal up.
And your pinks. Gab, air.
Today, you just put it on your shirt so you check them. Here's also the
Thank you.
Thank you so much. What is that? The ships that over there.
Huh?
The ships.
Okay, Jamestown. Let's see. Jamestown.
Oh, look at that. Look at the huts, the house. Oh, this is the
Over there.
temporary closed house.
This Indian exhibition.
Yeah. The house on the map. Ooh.
Huh?
Nice. Oh, very soft.
solar system. Like a solar system.
Chimney.
Huh?
A chimney.
How many? Let's see the house.
Oh, they make it this.
Bed, cooking, the kitchen. The kitchen.
That's just very nice, this one. Very soft. Raccoon. This is the arrow.
Here for
Huh, that's how they dry it. Fishing. Come here. All the skins fall down. The fur. Next. Eh?
tent and shelter.
Let's go camping. Let's go camping. Ships, James Ford. Let's go. Look at that! wrong? Everything. Cabby. One, two, three. 3 minutes.
Writes about them putting up old sailors on for use in tropical ports like Virginia. Henry Mainwaring moved into the similar thing.
If it wants to get a much better account of that fight, there is a YouTube channel called He does naval history stuff. He has like a half-hour video on the last day of the war event. I read it. So if you want to hear just like how crazy and insane that fight was, give that a listen. I mean, probably.
Y'all did too much. 6 meters.
This is where all 54 of these ships are passing through.
Okay.
Which as a cargo ship is designed to go back. Your crew of 17, because the ships have been designed for them, they've got quarters built in. Most are on the deck above, but if you are down here, they're at the extreme end. Captain gets his own private cabin. Only private cabin on the ship, with one exception. Of course, the cook's also cooking in the cabin, so basically it's these empty spaces that are filling all the stuff that
Let's say they get mad. They didn't take any prisoners.
Well, again, it depends on the situations. If they surrender early enough in, yeah, you'll probably take prisoners.
Fly, deer, keep them close watch. Like,
I mean, you got their ship, so you might put them prisoner on their ship, especially with a vessel like this where it's so filled up. But also, it's worth remembering, if they're coming here to establish colonies, they're not looking for a fight. In fact, being a cargo ship, you're probably not carrying a huge amount of ammunition on the ship. For perspective, the warship's probably carrying at least 30 shots per gun. And that's
I know.
like that's, but
I put it in perspective as like, when we think about this tunnel,
We got rid of it. Everything's fine. Okay, we're going to have this representing the poop. Okay? And it's just poop. Okay, who wants to be pooping? Okay, let's poop on the land. We have, I gotta get my river down. Okay, now we're just pooping on the land. That's the land, the animals, and the men. Yeah, I don't see any coming out. A little more. Okay, we're pooping.
That's
Okay.
for gardening. For gardening.
Yeah.
So like this garden working.
Right?
Garden, let's start planting now. James Ford. English settler. Yeah, from the side. Wood.
Here to put the powder for the gun.
Everything with the military.
Cannonballs bouncing off the surface of the York River or the Chesapeake Bay.
Right.
Pizza! Here.
Like battalion. Army.
That guy was cool. He can sword. And it was awesome.
Recording. Recording.
But that is the chicken.
No, chicken. Look.
Yeah.
Chicken. Chicken.
That's where she lives.
Chicken house.
The fires from here. Boom. That's a big cannon. Bye, chicken. Are you real or are you not? Come. Someone's
Carpenter here.
that was them making your
Yeah. Tin.
sambal. What's that? It's for the wheel.
Maybe here for the officers.
The bed.
For the officers.
Fire. Right agreement. The agreement. The writing desk. What's that? Wine?
It's the living room.
But they are.
Here.
Chimney.
They put the TV.
TV. That's nice.
As a routine, the patient gets a blow to the head, followed by hallucinations, vomiting, seizures, blurred vision. You have a subdural hematoma. And the treatment is trephination, boring a hole into the skull to drain the blood and relieve the pressure off the brain. Not a common procedure, but one that a surgeon has to be familiar with.
Which one's the one you pull the tooth out?
Do you give the anesthesia for
Most commonly use a drink called laudanum, which is made from opium, from poppy seed. So it functions like morphine. They sometimes used mandrake root, which is soaked into a sponge. Inhaling the vapors will put you into an altered state, a hallucinogen. But in Virginia, they're only going to have as much medicine as they can bring at a time, so sometimes surgery here is going to be more painful than in England because you're in the frontier. Stop bleeding rapidly and help seal up. Allow them to bore a hole into the bullet and pull it out of the bone.
Wow, he's doing medical stuff.
That's for use as part of an amputation.
Amputation.
So if you need to cut through a gangrenous limb, you need to wrap compression banding like a tourniquet around the top of the limb. This knife is used to slice the skin. Knives are used to cut the muscles and the tendons. A ligature is needed to clamp severed blood vessels so they can be sealed or tied off. And when you get to the bone, use a saw.
So what is this one then?
If you have a patient who has severe frostbite and one of their fingers went completely dead, use this with a hammer and chisel.
Oh wow, okay. Does it have like a, does it like hit it with something or?
Use a mallet.
Oh, okay, wow.
And then they cauterize it so they don't leak. Oh,
Did they do like leeches and stuff back then, or was that way too?
It is something that was done in the 17th century, probably not as much as popular culture would lead you to believe. There is an anticoagulant in the saliva of leeches that can help with certain kinds of wounds, but I would not say it as a kite. Okay. And that weed is today called Jimson. The reason why it's called Jimson is because it's a corruption of Jamestown. Jimson weed comes from Jamestown. So yes, there is a local plant that worked as a hallucinogen. I do not believe that they were able to use this medicinally though, because it was very difficult to control. Yeah, it was generally pretty harmful. Okay, so yes.
Wow.
But other than that, there really isn't anything in this area that could be used as an anesthetic.
Or that the Native Americans used. They
didn't use any anesthetics. 1617, later on, he publishes The Surgeon's Mate, which is
furniture. Oh, that's nice. Small. How it is? Oh, they make it small now. Before it may be longer. It's like for the baby. Sword.
Some of them do. My grandma in Tennessee had it's called a pump boarding, and you have to pump it while you're playing it. So like this, I'm hanging on both sides of the it almost fell off. My grandpa
It's so pretty in here.
Isn't they do a good job?
Like, I would have been religious if this was what the churches look like. Oh, why can't you go in there anymore? Oh, yeah.
Oh, that can be that one.
Yes.
What's this? Kitchen. That's a gun?
Yeah.
That's very big.
Just in case.
How they cannot carry it?
This from wire. Metal wire.
Whoa! Heavy.
Metal wire.
Uh-huh. Like iron. Wow. Yeah.
But it actually is the, what they would refer to as the quarter guard or guardhouse. So think of it manned 24/7, and fire is just a necessary daily appliance in this time period. Even in the heat of summer, cooking and all that kind of thing. But also because you are relying on matchlocks as your primary firearm. Match needs going up the chimney instead of
Why do they have the bow and arrow there?
These are examples of Powhatan weapons.
But they're in here.
Yep, so we can talk about them.
Oh, I see.
You know, why are the English wearing armor? That's why. And you can imagine, if somebody's been training since they were 5 or 6 years old, building the skill and the physical conditioning to wield that bow and be able to put that wherever they want it. Armor's a good idea.
The armor doesn't really protect you his chakra.
Uh-huh. So very cool. Whoa, lots of barrels. Or this is the keep it up.
Yeah, the chip, the ship.
People are hiding. Smuggling.
Like in the movie.
Smuggling people, yeah. You can check it. Not yet. Soon.
We like to start most any of our demonstrations with an announcement of one sort or another, something to let everybody else know what's going on in case they want to come and join us. And we have found that one of the more effective ways of announcing a musket demonstration is to start by firing the musket. It does tend to get people's attention. So that's what I'm going to do, and then we'll talk about it a little bit and fire it a second time to wrap things up. If you don't care for loud noises, you may wish to cover your ears, as this can be a little bit on the loud side.
Got ready.
Set your peace. Get aye.
Whoa.
Like I said, usually a good way to get people's attention, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So what we have here is what is referred to as a matchlock musket, going to be the most common military firearm in use in this time period, and the main weapon for the soldiers here at Jamestown. They come to rely very heavily on this weapon because they feel it gives them some much-needed advantages in their combat here in Virginia. And of course, who were the English initially the most worried about having to fight here?
Spanish?
The Spanish, exactly right. They're coming over convinced they're going to have to fight the Empire of Spain for control of this territory. And while the Spanish made multiple attempts to attack the colony and got really close at least twice and never actually pulled the trigger, so to speak. And so we don't see active combat between English and Spanish forces here. And does that mean that the English had a nice peaceful time of their stay in Virginia? No. No, of course not. Who do they end up fighting with instead? Yeah, the native population, exactly. In this case, specifically the Powhatan chiefdom, over 3 periods of open warfare. Now, these are not just occasional skirmishes here and there. We see the First Anglo-Powhatan War last for 4.5 years. The Second War goes on for an entire decade. The Third War is an additional 2 years. So extensive periods of open conflict between the two cultures. And there is something that the Powhatan have beyond numbers and knowledge of the terrain and all that sort of thing that really worries the Englishman here. Anybody know what that might be? I think the Powhatan are bringing onto a battlefield that gives the English some concern.
Bow and arrow?
Bow and arrow. Now, this is the culture that gives us Robin Hood. The English had only just finally retired their own famed longbow 1 generation prior to Jamestown's establishment. If these guys are worried about how good the Powhatan are with their bow, what does that tell us about how good the Powhatan are with their bow?
Very.
Really good, yeah. One of the English gentry here, Alexander Whitaker, writing about the Powhatan archers, says, "I suppose the world hath no better marksman with a bow, for they will shoot the birds flying, the beasts running, and the fish swimming, and shoot with such a marvelous strength that one of ours taken without defensive arms was shot quite through his body, the arrow nailing both his arms to his sides." So, easy to see why these guys remain enthusiastic about wearing armor, and why they feel like they need some kind of advantage going up against that level of skill on the battlefield. Now, amongst other things, it's going to give you about twice the effective range of the Powhatan bow. That's useful right there. Right? Being able to hit them before they're close enough to accurately hit you. Certainly going to be useful for the English soldiers here. Hitting power is going to be another one. Arrows, whether Powhatan or European, are not getting through this breastplate. This is specifically designed to do so. Propelling, and they're not standardized, but the neighborhood of 1/12 of a pound of lead, upwards of the speed of sound. 1,300 feet per second. You get that kind of mass moving at that kind of velocity, you've got enough energy to reliably pierce armor or drop horses. Exponentially higher energy being transferred to the target than any arrow can accomplish. So, yeah, another big advantage there. And of course, the importance of a weapon that hits harder. Everybody? No. How many times do you want to have to shoot your adversary before he stops shooting back? Ideally once. Now, is it possible for a single arrow to kill you?
Yes.
Absolutely. Is it possible for a single arrow to hit you somewhere non-lethal but take you out of the fight?
Yes.
Is it possible to get stuck full of arrows and still be capable of fighting?
Yes.
Yes. It's down to exactly what it hits. It is highly unlikely that a single musket ball, no matter where it hits you, is going to leave you serviceable enough to continue fighting. So the likelihood of a single projectile taking you out of the fight is much higher with this weapon. Not necessarily the most important advantages for the Englishman. The warriors, the Powhatan warriors here, are so exceptional with their bow because of the depth of their training. They've been practicing since they're 5 or 6 years old. They've been building skill, physical conditioning, and strength around the use of that bow since kindergarten, basically. They should be that good, right? Now, some of the men that the Virginia Company has brought here do have a military background. They've similarly got years of experience that they can draw on. And some of the men they've brought here have likely never seen a battlefield before. And if you're a carpenter and you've been here for a month and now you got to go fight the Powhatan, you don't have time to catch up. That mountain warrior is better than you, stronger than you, faster than you, and you don't have time to catch up. You need an advantage that doesn't require years. I could teach you to use this thing today, and in a couple of weeks of practice get you pretty good at it. It doesn't require any great feats of strength to operate it. It doesn't require a high level of skill to be effective with it. It doesn't even require that you be in good physical shape to fight with it. When you think about the earliest years at Jamestown, how often are these guys in great physical shape?
Never.
Right, yeah, I mean, famine and starvation and malnutrition and rampant disease and all this kind of thing is taking its toll. If you're horrendously sick and weakened by hunger, you're going to have a hard time mustering the strength to pull a bowstring over and over again. If you can still stand up, you can fight with this. A English combat commander in the 1590s wrote something to that effect, saying, "How sick or weary a soldier may be, if he can but gain his feet and bring his musket to his rest, he still may serve his prince." You could be half dead with dysentery and still fight with this. So the ease of use, learning how and keeping doing it, that's going to be one of the most important advantages. And it's one of the reasons why ultimately firearms take over the battlefield. You don't have to raise warriors from childhood when this is what they rely on. It's a huge shift. Now to actually use the thing, operating procedure for the matchlock musket starts with this little pan here attached to the back of the barrel. And if I want to reload, my first concern, if I've already fired it, is to make sure there's nothing burning in there left over from the previous shot before I try to put more gunpowder in, right? So first, cast off, blow out, and if necessary, wipe out the pan to make sure I am clear of burning debris before, and then bring up the priming flask and fill that pan with powder. Close the pan cover so the powder stays put. Make sure there's no excess powder outside the pan that could cause it to go off before I want it to, and then cast it about. Each one of these little wooden bottles called chargers is going to carry just enough gunpowder to propel one bullet, measured out ahead of time so I don't have to worry about measuring in the middle of a fight. Pop the top off and empty that powder right on down the barrel. Bullets themselves are going to be carried in this pouch down here on the hip, and of course with the destructive potential of this weapon and the fact that we are demonstrating in the middle of a modern museum, I'm not using a lead ball today. We're using a paper ball instead. And that projectile is going to go directly in on top of the powder. Scouring stick used to push it to the breech and seat it tightly against the powder. Return the scouring stick, recover the weapon. And here's the part that gives it the name that we still use today for these sorts of weapons: firearm. Gunpowder doesn't just magically go off when you pull the trigger. You have to set fire to it. Now, pretty much every firearm invented after the matchlock has a means of creating the fire that it needs at the moment that it needs it. This weapon does not. So I carry burning cord called match. I'm going to take one end of that match, fix it into the serpentine, check to make sure it's going to land in the correct position. And all we've got to do is open the pan, exposing the powder, aim the weapon, and squeeze the trigger, which is simply going to dip that burning rope right into the gunpowder, set the whole thing off. Again, it does tend to be a little on the loud side, so you may wish to cover your ears. Present your peace. Give fire. All right. That concludes our demonstration. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out and see us today. If you have any questions about anything, we'll be happy to answer them for you. And if not, I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay.
What caliber is that?
This particular piece fires 68. Not a lot of standardization. So
Oh, I understand. That's early days. Gotcha.
So
Thank
when
you.
they were doing their farming, did they have to have guards watching over them?
During periods of warfare with the paladin, yeah, if you're on guard duty.